Dark clouds gathered above the alien plains. The sky was not normal. It did not look like a place of air and light, but like a monster stretching its arms wide, ready to swallow everything below. The wind pushed against the ground, bending the tall red grass until it nearly broke. Lightning cracked in the distance, lighting the world white for only a moment, then leaving it darker than before. The cubs shivered. They were young, but even the young of their people knew the warnings. The elders said the storm was forbidden. No one was ever to step inside it. The elders told stories of hunters, soldiers, even whole groups of warriors who had entered, and none of them had returned. The cubs had listened to these stories since birth. The storm was not just weather, it was death. And yet, there he was, the human. He stood at the edge of the storm as if it were only rain and wind. His clothes moved with the gust, his hair wild, but his body was calm. His feet did not step back. His eyes looked forward into the black wall of clouds, like a man staring into the heart of a beast. The cubs looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. He was different from them, smaller in frame, weaker in flesh, or so they had always believed. But the way he stood there made their scales prickle. He did not look weak at all. He looked like someone who had been here before. One of the cubs, the smallest, whimpered, "We cannot go in. The elders said it is cursed." The human turned his head slightly. His voice was quiet, but it carried against the howling wind. "It is not cursed. It is only a storm." The cubs did not believe him. No one believed that. They backed away a step, tails low, ears flat, claws gripping the dirt. The storm roared louder, as if it wanted to prove the human wrong. Thunder crashed, so near that the ground shook under their feet. The cubs cried out in fear, but the human did not move. He lifted his hand and pointed toward the black wall of clouds. "If you want to be strong, you must enter. If you want to be unbreakable, you must face what breaks everything else." The cubs froze. His words were sharp like blades. They cut deeper than the thunder or the wind. No elder had ever spoken like that. The elders said strength came from bloodlines, from training, from tradition. But this human said strength came from walking into death itself. "Why?" one cub whispered. His voice shook like dry leaves. "Why should we trust you?" The human's eyes narrowed. For a moment, lightning flashed, and in that light his face looked carved from stone. Then he spoke again. "Because I have done it before. Because on my world, storms are not monsters. They are teachers. And I am still here." The cubs stared. Their hearts beat fast. They wanted to run, to hide, to stay in the safe caves their people had built. But a different feeling stirred in them too. Curiosity. If this fragile being, this human, could stand unafraid, then what secret did he know? The storm growled louder, pulling at them with every gust. The red grass bent so far it tore free from the dirt. Dust filled the air. The cubs pressed their eyes shut, coughing, their small bodies pushed sideways. But when they opened their eyes again, the human was still there, still standing, still waiting. The largest cub stepped forward, trembling. "The storm will kill us." The human shook his head. "The storm only kills those who bow to it. Do not bow." The words rang in their ears. Do not bow. No elder had ever said that either. They had always been told to avoid the storm, to hide, to fear. But now this human said the opposite, that survival was not about escape, but about standing tall. The cubs looked at one another. Their bodies shook. Their instincts screamed to turn back. But the human's eyes were steady, his voice strong. Something about him felt more real than the wind, more powerful than the thunder. And then, without waiting for their choice, the human took the first step. His foot crossed a line between calm air and chaos. The storm swallowed him whole. The cubs gasped. The wind tore at his body. but he kept moving. Lightning flashed again, and for a heartbeat, they saw him inside, his figure small against a vast black storm. Yet he walked like it was nothing. The cubs stood frozen. Their hearts pounded. If they followed, they might die. If they stayed, they would never know. The smallest cub whispered again, but this time his voice was different. Maybe we should follow him. The others turned to him in shock, but deep inside they all felt the same strange pull. The storm was death. The storm was forbidden. The storm was impossible. And yet, a human had just walked into it. The cubs did not know it yet, but this was the beginning of something greater than fear. The storm was not just waiting to destroy them. It was waiting to change them forever. The storm swallowed the human. One moment he stood on solid ground, visible in the gray light. The next, the winds closed around him, and he vanished like a stone dropped into a raging sea. The cubs stood frozen, claws digging into the dirt. Their bodies shook, not only from the cold winds pressing at their scales, but from something deeper, pure terror. The storm was alive. Every crack of thunder was a roar. Every flash of lightning a strike from an unseen predator. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, as if something massive and unseen was walking inside the wall of black clouds. Dust swirled through the air, choking their throats, stinging their eyes. The cubs had heard stories about this storm since they were old enough to understand words. Their elders told them the storm was cursed, a punishment left behind by ancient gods. They said any creature who entered was torn apart, body and soul. And yet, a human had walked straight into it. The smallest cub, barely more than a child, whimpered and pulled back from the edge. His tail curled under his body, and his voice cracked. He is gone. He cannot survive. No one survives. The older cubs did not answer. They wanted to believe his words, because believing meant safety. Believing meant they could turn away, run back to their dens, and forget the human ever asked them to follow. But another part of them, deep, restless, burning, refused to believe. The human was not like the elders. The elders had only spoken warnings, only taught fear. The human's eyes had been different. His words had been sharp, cutting through their fear like a blade through cloth. Do not bow. The cubs remembered that. The words struck their hearts harder than the thunder ever could. The largest cub, thick with muscle though still young, tried to sound brave. His chest rose and fell quickly as he spoke. We cannot follow him. The storm will crush us. We should return before it grows worse. But even as he said it, his voice shook. His eyes, wide and darting, betrayed him. Another cub, lean and quick, shook his head. His claws dug at the earth, and his breath came fast. If he comes back out, if he walks out alive, then everything we were told is a lie. Do you want to live your life knowing you turn away from the truth? The group fell silent. The thought sank into them like a stone falling into deep water. The smallest cub shook harder. His scales rattled against one another. He will not come back. He is already gone. We will never see him again. The lean cub snapped back. Then why do I still hear him in my head? His words are still here. His steps are still in front of me. He has not vanished. He is waiting. The storm howled, as if mocking them. Sand and shards of stone struck their bodies. Their eyes burned from the grit. Their ears rang with the noise of 1,000 crashes. They wanted to flee. Every instinct told them to run. But another instinct, smaller but stronger, kept them rooted. It was not courage yet. It was not bravery. It was something else. Curiosity. The human had spoken of storms on his world. He had spoken of children walking through them, as if it were normal. The cubs could not imagine such a place. If storms like this existed on Earth, how could humans survive long enough to grow up unless humans were stronger than they had ever believed, that thought frightened them more than the storm itself. The youngest cub pressed against the largest for comfort. I cannot do it. My legs will not move. My heart is too fast. The largest cub tried to steady him, but his own body trembled. He looked at the storm, then back at the others. His voice came low. He said we would be unbreakable. Do you want to be unbreakable? The lean cub's eyes narrowed. He bared his teeth, though not in anger. It was a strange expression, something between fear and hunger. Yes, more than anything. The group fell silent again. The storm screamed around them, tearing grass from the soil, snapping small trees like twigs. But inside that chaos, they felt something shift. Their fear was still there, heavy and sharp, but beneath it another feeling grew. Hope. Hope that maybe the human knew something their kind had forgotten. Hope that maybe the storm was not a curse, but a test. Hope that survival was not about hiding in caves, but walking through fire, rain, and death itself. The youngest cub sniffed hard, forcing down his tears. But what if we fall? What if it takes us? The lean cub stepped closer, his claws pressing against the dirt to steady himself. Then at least we will fall beside him. I would rather fall with the human than live my life knowing I bowed to the storm. The largest cub growled, not in anger, but to drown out the thunder in his own chest. If we go in, there is no turning back. The others nodded. They knew the human had not asked twice. He had not begged them. He had only walked forward, sure of his path. He had left the choice with them. And now the choice pressed on their hearts like the weight of the sky. The smallest cub's claws dug into the soil. His fear was raw, heavy, endless. But when he closed his eyes, he saw the human's face lit by lightning. Calm, strong, alive. And when he opened his eyes, he whispered the words he thought he would never say. Maybe we should follow him. The others stared at him in shock. The smallest had always been the weakest, the one who cried first, the one who hid during trials. Yet now, trembling as he was, he had spoken what they were all too afraid to admit. The lean cub gave a sharp nod. Then it is decided. The largest cub gritted his teeth. His body ached from fear, but his voice was steady now. Together, we go together. Slowly, one by one, the cubs stepped forward. Their bodies leaned into the wind. Dust clawed at their faces. Rain stung their eyes. Thunder cracked so close it made their bones shake. Every step was heavy, like dragging their feet through thick mud. But still they moved. The storm did not welcome them. It fought them, screamed at them, tried to drive them back. But for the first time in their short lives, the cubs did not run. They followed the human into the darkness. The first steps were the hardest. Each one felt like walking into a monster's jaws. Yet with every step, they remembered his voice. Do not bow. Fear still lived in them, sharp and biting. But something else lived there now too. A spark, a question, a hunger. The storm had always been forbidden. But what if it was not meant to be feared? What if it was meant to be conquered? The cubs did not know the answer yet. All they knew was this. They could not turn back. The storm waited, and inside it, the human walked ahead, steady and unbroken. And now, for the first time, the cubs walked after him. The cubs stepped into the storm. The change was instant. One heartbeat they stood on the edge, the ground still beneath them, the sky heavy but not yet wild. The next heartbeat, they were swallowed whole. The storm roared around them like an angry beast. Wind slammed against their bodies, pushing them sideways, pulling at their arms, tails, and legs as if trying to tear them apart. Dust filled the air, choking them. Pebbles and shards of stone struck their scales like knives. Their eyes watered until they could barely see. The smallest cub cried out. His voice was stolen by the wind, ripped away before it could even reach the others. He stumbled, falling to his knees, his claws scratching at the dirt. The ground itself felt alive, shaking with every strike of thunder. The largest cub grabbed his arm and pulled him back up, but even as he did, his own feet slid on the loose earth. He pressed hard against the gale, shoulders hunched, body bent low. "This is death," the smallest cub shouted, though no one heard him over the storm. His own words felt like nothing in the chaos. The lean cub pressed forward, each step like lifting a mountain. His ears rang from the endless crashes in the sky. His eyes burned, but his mind held on to one thought. The human is ahead. The human had walked into the storm as if it were nothing. If he could do it, then so could they. Lightning split the sky, so close it blinded them. For a heartbeat the world turned white. In that flash they saw him. Farther inside, his figure dark against the storm. He was walking steady, upright, calm, as if the storm was not a monster, but only air and light. The sight hit them like fire in their veins. The cubs staggered, coughed, stumbled, but they kept moving. Every step was pain. The storm did not welcome them. It tried to crush them, to bury them under fear. The wind screamed in their ears, sharp and endless. Their bodies bent forward, claws digging into the ground to hold themselves steady. Their tails whipped in every direction. The youngest cub's legs shook. His chest burned with each breath. His mind screamed at him to turn back. "You will die here. The elders were right. This storm eats the living." But another voice spoke inside him, quiet but strong. "The human is still walking. Do not bow." He forced one foot forward, then another. The lean cub coughed hard, spitting blood from his mouth where a stone had cut his lip. His eyes watered, but his teeth were bare in a strange grin. The storm could throw dust and rocks, but it could not throw him back. The largest cub pressed against the gale with his whole body. He felt his muscles tear, his joints ache, but he refused to stop. Every thunderclap felt like claws tearing into his heart, but still he moved. Time blurred. The storm had no beginning or end. It was only noise, only chaos, only struggle. Each step was a war. Each breath was a battle. And still, the human walked ahead. The cubs could no longer hear his voice, but they remembered his words. The storm is not here to kill you. It is here to strip away your fear. Fear, that was the true enemy. The youngest cub stumbled again, falling to his knees. Dust filled his mouth. His chest heaved. His claws scraped at the earth. He wanted to cry, to beg for help, to run back. The largest cub turned, pulling him up once more. Their eyes met. For the first time, the largest did not see weakness in the smallest eyes. He saw fire. Faint, small, but fire all the same. The smallest growled, forcing his legs to stand. His voice cracked, but he spoke anyway. "I will not bow." The lean cub laughed, though it sounded more like a cough. "Then none of you else will." Together, they moved deeper. The storm grew wilder the farther they went. Rain began to fall, sharp and cold, striking their bodies like claws. The ground turned to mud, sucking at their feet, trying to trap them. The wind shifted directions again and again, never letting them rest, never giving them balance. But something strange happened. The cubs stopped stumbling as much. Their eyes, though burning, began to adjust. Their legs, though heavy, began to steady. They leaned into the storm not as prey fleeing a predator, but as hunters pushing through a trial. The fear was still there, sharp and alive. But alongside it, something else grew. A rhythm, a strange, wild energy. They began to move faster. The youngest cub no longer whimpered. He kept his jaw tight, his eyes forward. His body shook, but his steps grew firm. The largest cub no longer bent so low. He straightened his back, shoulders wide, eyes narrowed against the rain. His chest rose steady, his growl constant. The lean cub no longer only pressed forward. He began to laugh again, louder this time, even as blood ran down his lip. The storm's fury made him stronger. And always, the human walked ahead. Lightning lit his shape again, clear and sharp. He did not stumble. He did not bend. His arms were loose at his sides, his head lifted, his steps even. He was not fighting the storm. He was moving with it, through it, as if it were no more dangerous than walking across grass. The cubs' hearts pounded. They were not like him. They were not calm. They were not steady. But they were still moving. And for the first time they felt it. Maybe they could survive this. The storm tried harder. The wind screamed louder. The rain fell heavier. The thunder cracked like mountains splitting apart. But the cubs no longer thought of turning back. They no longer thought of elders' warnings or curse stories. They thought only of a human steps ahead, steady and unbroken. They thought only of their own legs moving forward, one after another, refusing to stop. Fear had not left them, but it had changed. Fear was no longer a chain dragging them down. Fear was now a fire pushing them forward. They were inside the storm. It was bigger than anything they had ever known, more terrible than any beast. But they were still alive. They were still standing. And step by step, they walked deeper into the darkness, their eyes fixed on a human who led them. The storm was not their master. It was their trial, and they would not bow. The storm grew worse. It did not fade with time. It did not calm as they pressed deeper. Instead, it became heavier, louder, sharper. The rain turned into sheets of ice, striking their bodies like stones. The wind screamed in every direction, tearing at their arms, pulling their legs sideways. Thunder shook the ground as if the sky itself was breaking apart. The cubs could barely breathe. Every breath felt like swallowing knives. Their lungs burned. Their muscles ached. Their eyes stung so badly they could only open them halfway. The youngest cub fell again, this time face first into the mud. His claws scraped helplessly at the ground as the storm pushed him down. He cried out, but the sound was small, stolen by the roar of the gale. The largest cub bent to pull him up, but his own arms shook. His strength was fading. His chest heaved as if he carried stones inside. He looked down at the smallest and for the first time thought, maybe he will not rise again. The lean cub pressed on, but even his body trembled. His legs moved like broken branches, stiff and weak. His grin was gone. His eyes were dim. One by one they began to break. The storm was not only tearing at their flesh. It was digging into their hearts, whispering that they were weak, too weak to stand, too weak to fight. The elders had been right. The storm said. No one entered and survived. The youngest rolled onto his side, chest heaving, eyes glassy. "I cannot," he gasped. His voice was barely a whisper. "It is too much." The largest knelt beside him, his own arms barely able to hold steady. His voice was heavy, tired. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe humans are mad. The lean cub staggered, falling to his knees in the mud. He pressed his claws into the dirt, his back bent. "We will die here. That is what the storm wants." Their voices trembled, their bodies bent, their wills cracked. The storm roared louder as if pleased. And then the human appeared. He had walked ahead, but now he returned, stepping to the storm as if it had no power over him. His hair was soaked, his face streaked with rain, but his eyes burned steady. His feet pressed firm against the mud, never slipping. He looked down at the cubs, broken and trembling, and his voice cut through the storm like a blade. "Why are you on the ground?" The cubs looked up at him with wide, desperate eyes. Their bodies screamed with pain. Their hearts begged for rest. The youngest whispered again, "We cannot. It is too strong. We are too weak." The human crouched beside him, His eyes were not cruel, but they were hard, like stone that had survived countless winters. He placed a hand on the cub's shoulder. "The storm is not here to kill you," he said. His voice was calm, quiet, steady. "It is here to strip away your fear." The cubs blinked. His words did not make sense. The lean cub coughed hard, spitting blood into the mud. "Fear? This is not fear. This is death." The human shook his head. "No, death is simple. Death is quick. This is different. This storm wants you to bow. That is its true power. Not the wind, not the rain, not the thunder. It wants you to kneel." The largest cub growled weakly. "And what if we do?" "Then you stay broken," the human said. The storm screamed around them, but his words were louder in their hearts. The youngest closed his eyes, shivering. His mind remembered the elders' stories, the warnings, the fear. He remembered hiding in caves, listening to thunder outside, believing the storm was a monster. Now the human said the storm was only a mask, a test, a place where fear grew large, but only if they allowed it. The human rose to his feet. Lightning lit his body for a heartbeat, his shape sharp against the black sky. He lifted his arms wide, facing the storm head-on. "Look," he shouted. His voice carried even through the roar. "The storm is not my master. It does not decide if I live. I decide." And with that, he laughed. The cubs stared in shock. His laugh was not wild like the lean cub's, not trembling like the youngest whimper. It was steady, deep, fearless. A laugh that told the storm it was nothing. The storm roared louder, as if enraged. The wind struck him harder. The rain fell sharper. But the human did not move. His body stayed tall, his feet steady, his laugh unbroken. The cub's heart shook. If he could do it, then maybe they could too. The human lowered his arms and looked back at them. "Rise. Do not give the storm what it wants. Do not bow." The largest cub clenched his teeth. His body screamed, his arms trembled, but he pressed one hand into the mud and pushed. His legs shook as he rose to his knees, then to his feet. His chest burned, but he stood. The lean cub followed, breath ragged, blood dripping from his lip. His back straightened, his claws curled, and he too stood tall against the storm. The youngest trembled hardest of all. His body begged for rest. His legs felt hollow. His heart felt small. But when he looked at the human, calm, steady, laughing, something inside him sparked. "I will not bow," he whispered. His claws dug into the mud. His legs shook as he rose. The storm pushed, screamed, slammed against him. But inch by inch he stood, his body bent, but his spirit held. The human nodded once, his face unreadable but his eyes alive. "Now walk." The cubs staggered forward. Their steps were slow, painful, heavy. The storm fought them with every breath. But they no longer crawled. They no longer begged. They no longer thought only of death. They thought of standing tall. They thought of proving that the storm could not break them. Every step was agony. Every step was a war. But for the first time, the cubs did not feel like prey. They felt like hunters walking through the jaws of a beast. The storm had not grown weaker. Their bodies had not grown stronger. But something inside them had changed. They had bent. They had cracked. They had nearly broken. And then they had risen again. That was the breaking point. The place where weakness died and something new was born. The cubs no longer walked only behind the human. They walked with him. Side by side, the human and the cubs pressed deeper into the storm, their bodies battered, their eyes burning, their spirits unbowed. The storm screamed, but they screamed louder inside. And the storm, for the first time, began to feel small. The storm raged around them, louder and wilder than anything the cubs had ever known. Rain hammered their bodies. Wind pushed against them like solid walls. Lightning lit the sky in blinding bursts, followed by thunder that rattled their bones. Mud clung to their claws. Their muscles burned. Every step was pain. Every breath was fire. Yet the human walked ahead, steady and calm, as if the storm were nothing. His arms swung lightly at his sides. His eyes were fixed forward, unafraid, unshaken. The cubs followed him, staggered, battered, exhausted, but they still moved. Each step was harder than the last. Every instinct screamed to fall, to run, to hide. The youngest cub lagged behind, mud weighing his legs, rain blinding his eyes. Why does he not fall? He whispered to himself. The lean cub glanced back, shaking his head. I do not know. I do not even understand how it is possible. The storm should have taken him long ago. The largest cub growled, teeth gritted against pain. He is not like us. Humans are different. And that difference was about to reveal itself. The human stopped suddenly. He turned to the cubs, water streaming from his hair, rain plastering his clothes to his body. Lightning flashed behind him, casting him in stark white light against a black storm. For the first time, the cubs saw something in his eyes that they had not seen before. Not fear, not panic, but a memory, a story. Do you want to know the truth? The human asked. His voice carried easily over the roar of the storm. It was calm, even gentle, but it carried weight. The cubs blinked. Their bodies were heavy. Their hearts were tired, yet they nodded. They wanted to know. The human stepped closer, lifting a hand to shield his eyes from rain. On my world, storms are not enemies. They are teachers. They are tests. Children face them from a young age. They run into rain, into wind, into lightning. Not because they're foolish, but because that is how they learn. That is how they grow strong. The cubs stared, their ears flicking. Children? Small humans? The largest asked, disbelief in his voice. Yes, the human said. Small humans like you, they run into storms and fall. They get hurt. They cry. And they get up again, over and over, until the storm no longer controls them. Until they know they are stronger than fear. The youngest cub's tail twitched. Stronger than fear? How can running into this monster make us stronger? The human's eyes narrowed, but his lips curved in a faint smile. Because fear is a cage. Every being has it. It is natural. But if you let fear decide your steps, it will destroy you before the storm even touches you. You must face it. You must walk into it. Only then do you know your true strength. The cubs shivered. Rain and wind lashed at them. Mud slicked their claws. Every muscle ached. Every nerve burned. And yet, something stirred inside. A question. A spark. The lean cub asked, voice trembling. And humans, they survive? They are not crushed. The human shook his head. No, not always. Many fall. Many never rise again. But those who do, they become unbreakable. They learn that no storm, no matter how fierce, decides their life. Courage decides. The cubs' eyes widened. The word courage echoed in their minds. They had heard the elders speak of strength, of hunting, of war, but never courage like this. The kind that walked straight into death and did not bow. Lightning split the sky. The storm screamed louder, as if trying to remind them that it was still alive. The cubs felt the cold strike into their bones. Fear tried to rise again, heavy and sharp. But the human stood in front of them, calm and unyielding. Do you understand now? He asked. The storm is not your enemy. It cannot take what is already yours. Your strength, your courage, your will, these no storm can touch. You only fail if you stop moving, if you let fear bow you before it does. The cub shivered. Slowly, the smallest stepped forward, wet and trembling, but it is so strong. The human's smile widened faintly. Yes, and so are you. Every step you take through this storm, every breath, every moment you refuse to kneel, that is strength. That is courage. That is life. The cubs exchanged glances. Their bodies ached. Their claws were cut. Their fur and scales were slick with mud and rain. But something inside them shifted. Fear was no longer only pain. It was fuel. It was fire. The largest cub stepped closer to human. Then if we survive, will we be unbreakable too? The human knelt, lowering himself to their level. His eyes were steady, burning in the storm. If you survive, yes, you will not only walk through any storm, you will face fear in all its forms and stand tall. That is what it means to be unbreakable, not just in body, but in spirit. The cubs swallowed hard. Their chests rose and fell quickly. They looked at each other. The storm was still howling. The ground shook beneath their feet. Their limbs screamed with pain. And yet, for the first time, they felt it, a small surge of hope. The lean cub growled softly. Then we will not fall. We will rise. The youngest whispered, almost to himself, I want to be unbreakable. The human stood, rain pouring from his hair. He turned to the cubs and nodded. Then walk with me, step by step, one at a time. Do not think about the storm. Think only about moving forward. That is all courage asks. The cubs squared their shoulders. Their tails rose slightly, stiff and proud despite the mud and ice. Their claws gripped the ground firmly. Their eyes, wide and bright despite the exhaustion, fixed on the human ahead. They took the first step together. The storm screamed. Thunder cracked, shaking the earth. Lightning flashed, blinding them. Rain pounded their backs. Wind tried to push them backward, to make them bow. And yet they walked, step by step, their legs aching, their bodies screaming. They moved forward. Step by step, they remembered the human's words. Fear is a cage. Courage is the key. The human glanced back at them, smiling faintly, though exhaustion streaked his face. Do not stop, he said. Not until the storm bows to you. Not until you have learned what it means to be unbreakable. And in that moment, something changed. The cubs were still wet, cold, and battered. They were still young and untested. But inside them, a fire burned brighter than any lightning. A fire the storm could not touch. They were learning the secret the human carried. Strength is not only in the claws, the muscles, or the teeth. Strength is in the heart. Strength is in courage. Strength is in rising when the world tells you to fall. The storm would not yield. The rain would not stop. The wind would not relent. But the cubs had begun to understand something no other warrior from their world had known. And that understanding changed everything. The human looked ahead again, the storm behind and around them. He was no longer only their guide. He was a teacher, a master of the impossible. The cubs knew this. They felt it in their bones, even through the mud, blood, and ice. And they would follow him to the end of the storm and beyond. The storm had been raging for hours, yet the cubs no longer noticed its fury in the same way. Rain fell in sharp sheets. Wind tore at their bodies, and lightning cracked above them like the sky itself was breaking. But the cubs moved through it differently now. Their steps were steadier. Their claws gripped the ground with purpose. Their muscles, though tired, were no longer only fighting to survive. They were fighting to prove something to themselves. The youngest cub led, though his legs shook. He had fallen countless times, every step more painful than the last. But now, when he looked at the human ahead, he felt a strange strength inside him. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it burned hotter than the storm. The lean cub moved beside him, ears flicking, eyes sharp. He laughed again, though it was rough from exhaustion and mud. The laughter was different now. It was a cry of defiance. The storm could roar. The thunder could shake the earth. but he would not bow. The largest cub walked behind, scanning the storm. His muscles burned, his chest heaved, and his claws were slick with mud, but his head was high. For the first time, he realized that the storm was no longer their enemy. It was their teacher, their forge, their trial. Every gust of wind, every slice of rain, every strike of lightning had shaped them. The human walked ahead, steady, almost serene, as if the storm were nothing. But even he glanced back at them now, eyes sharp, watching, encouraging, guiding. He did not speak. He did not need to. The cubs understood. Every step they took was a lesson. Every breath, a test. Every heartbeat, a measure of their courage. The storm screamed. Thunder shook the ground, deafening and deep. Lightning split the sky, so bright it left the world white for a moment. The cubs flinched, but then kept moving. They had learned to anticipate the strikes, to bend and twist with the wind, to move with the storm rather than fight against it. The youngest cub stumbled, his claws slipping in the mud, but he caught himself. His legs burned, his body trembled, but he kept moving. Pain was no longer an excuse to stop. Fear was no longer an excuse to bow. He pressed forward, step by step, until he was running, lean and wild, laughing through the rain, pushing himself as hard as he could. The lean cub followed, muscles tight, claws digging deep. His body ached, but the ache was now a signal of life, of strength, not weakness. Every step through the storm had sharpened him, had taught him endurance, had taught him what it meant to move forward even when everything around you tried to destroy you. The largest cub roared not in fear, but in triumph. The sound carried through the storm, a deep vibration that made the wind pause for a heartbeat. He had fallen, stumbled, begged for rest, but now he walked with purpose. The storm had not broken him. It had shaped him. The human's eyes glinted in the lightning as he watched them. He had seen this moment before. The moment when fear and exhaustion meet determination and courage. The moment when the weak begin to rise and the broken begin to mend. The moment when the storm, no matter how powerful, becomes nothing compared to the spirit that refuses to kneel. The cubs began to notice it themselves. The storm was still there, wild and furious, but was no longer the force of doom it had seemed. The wind still pushed, but they leaned into it. The rain still struck, but they welcomed it. The lightning still cracked, but they moved with it rather than flinching. Step by step, they began to feel the storm as part of themselves, not as a monster outside, but as a mirror inside. Every gust of wind reflected their own fear. Every strike of rain reflected their own courage. Every thunderclap reflected their own heartbeat. The youngest cub felt it first. His heart was still pounding, his lungs still burned, but he felt something new. Control. He could predict the gusts, bend with the wind, duck the lightning strikes. The storm did not command him. He commanded his own body. The lean cub felt it next. His body moved faster, smoother, almost without thought. The storm was still harsh, but it could no longer overwhelm him. He could fight it, dance with it, move inside it. The fear that had ruled him for hours melted, replaced with exhilaration. He laughed, not because it was safe, but because he was alive and stronger than he had ever been. The largest cub felt it last, but most fully, every muscle, every joint, every breath burned, but he felt the rhythm of the storm. The chaos was no longer chaos. It was a song, and he could move with it. His roar echoed with power, a challenge not to the storm, but to himself. The storm could try to break him, but he would not bend. He would not falter. He would not bow. The human slowed, watching them. A faint smile touched his lips. He had not done this for them. He had guided them. They had done this themselves. Every step, every stumble, every rise had been theirs. He had only shown them the path, pointed out the truth. "Do you feel it?" he called out over the wind, his voice calm and sure. The cubs looked at him, gasping, wet, muddy, exhausted, but alive. "Yes," the youngest said, voice trembling but strong. I feel it." The lean cub added, "It is inside me. I am not afraid." The largest cub roared, a deep, powerful sound. I am strong." The human nodded. "That is the secret. You are not unbreakable because the storm has spared you. You are unbreakable because you have faced the storm, embraced it, and walked through it. The storm cannot touch what is already strong inside. The cub's eyes widened. For the first time, they understood fully. Strength was not just muscle. Strength was not just skill. Strength was courage, spirit, and will. It was rising when the world tried to push you down. It was walking through fire, rain, wind, and thunder and refusing to kneel. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, and the cubs flinched, but only slightly. They moved through it. They moved with it. They were no longer prey. They were no longer weak. They were warriors forged in the storm itself. The human extended a hand. Step closer. Walk with me to the edge. See what you have become. The cubs obeyed, moving side by side, their steps now sure, their bodies alive with power. They looked back at the storm that had seemed endless, that had seemed impossible. They felt the pain, the fear, the struggle, but they also felt pride, courage, and strength. The storm began to fade, not because it had lost, but because it no longer mattered. The cubs had changed. The storm was nothing compared to the fire inside them. Every drop of rain, every gust of wind, every flash of lightning had shaped them, had carved them into something stronger. They stopped at the edge of the storm. Mud clung to their claws, blood streaked their fur and scales, and their bodies shook with exhaustion. But their eyes burned bright. Their tails flicked with energy. Their hearts pounded with life. The human looked at them, pride clear in his eyes. "You have done it," he said softly. "You have walked through fear and emerged stronger. You are not broken. You are unbreakable." The cubs stared at him, then at themselves. They flexed their claws. They shook their fur and scales. They breathed deep. For the first time, they felt the truth of the words. They were unbreakable. The storm, once a terrifying wall of chaos, was now behind them. Its roar was distant, its lightning faint. The cubs stood tall, proud, and alive. They had faced the impossible and survived. They had embraced fear, pain, and exhaustion, and they had risen. The humans smiled, silent now, watching the cubs as they took their first true steps as warriors of courage, strength, and unbreakable spirit. The transformation was complete. They were no longer children trembling in fear. They were no longer prey to the storm or to doubt. They were unbreakable, and they knew, deep inside, that nothing in the world could ever bend them again. The storm was behind them. Its roar faded into distant thunder. The lightning no longer cracked the sky, but scattered into faint flashes, like sparks dying out. Rain still fell, but gentle now, washing the mud and blood from their bodies. The wind had lost its fury, curling softly around them, almost as if the storm itself was bowing in respect. The cubs stood at the edge of the plains, eyes wide, chests heaving, tails flicking with energy. Their bodies were battered, soaked, and trembling, but inside they felt something no storm, no fear, and no enemy could take away. They were unbreakable. The youngest cub shook water from his fur, lifting his head to look at the sky. His eyes glistened with rain and something deeper, pride, courage, strength. He had faced the impossible. He had fallen, been battered, and nearly broken. Yet here he stood, alive, unbowed, and changed forever. The lean cub looked around, scanning the land. Everything seemed sharper, brighter, more alive. Even the red grass that had been flattened and torn by the storm now waved gently in the wind, as if bowing to the new strength that walked upon it. His claws dug into the earth. Firm? Sure. He felt power in every muscle, control in every step, fire in every heartbeat. The largest cub roared, a deep, trembling sound that carried across the plains. It was not fear. It was triumph. Every ounce of pain, exhaustion, and terror melted into a single force, a declaration of life, strength, and unyielding courage. The roar echoed against distant cliffs and hills, announcing that something extraordinary had emerged from the storm. The human stood before them, calm and steady, watching with quiet pride. His hair clung to his face. Mud streaked his body. His clothes were soaked, torn, and heavy, yet his eyes shone bright, alive, unbroken. He had guided them, yes, but they had walked this path themselves. Every stumble, every rise, every step through chaos had been theirs alone. "You did it," the human said, his voice carrying easily over the soft wind. You face a storm and refuse to bow. You are no longer the same as you were before. You've been forged in its fire. The cubs blinked. They had walked through death, through fear, and survived. They had embraced pain and struggled against the impossible. And now, looking at him, they realized the truth. They were stronger than they had ever imagined, not just in body, but in spirit. The youngest cub whispered, voice trembling but steady, We are unbreakable." The human nodded. "Yes, not because the storm spared you, but because you refused to let it break you. That is the power of courage. That is the power of will." The lean cub stretched, testing his muscles. Every step from now on felt different. His legs did not shake. His claws did not slip. His heart no longer raced in fear. It beat with strength, control, and freedom. "It feels incredible," he said softly. "Like I can do anything." The largest cub nodded, his roar settling into a low growl of satisfaction. "The elders, they will not believe this," he muttered. "No one has ever done what we just did." The human's eyes glinted. "Let them see. Let them know. You have changed, and so has your story. You are no longer just cubs. You are warriors of courage, strength, and spirit. You are unbreakable." For a long moment, the cubs stood silently, breathing in the air. The storm had stripped them down to the core, leaving nothing but raw strength and the truth of themselves. They could feel it in their bones, in their muscles, in their claws and tails. They were alive, yes, but alive in a way they had never imagined. Alive and strong, unafraid, unstoppable. Then, slowly, they began to move forward. Each step was deliberate, each breath steady. They no longer stumbled. They no longer flinched. They walked with purpose, heads held high, tails flicking proudly. Their bodies were battered, yes, but every scar, every cut, every tear in their fur and scales was a reminder of what they had survived. Every mark was a medal, proof of courage and endurance. The plain stretched before them, vast and empty, yet alive with light after the storm. The red grass waved in gentle waves, reflecting the last of the fading lightning. Dust rose softly in the air. Every sound was clear, every movement precise, every heartbeat strong. The cubs reached the center of the open land, side by side, forming a small line. The human stopped before them, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes scanning their faces. For the first time, the cubs noticed a small smile tugging at his lips. Not prideful or boastful, just quiet approval. "You have done more than survive," he said. "You have learned. You have grown. You have become what few ever will. And that is the greatest strength of all." The youngest cub raised his head, gaze steady. We will never forget this." "No," the human said. "You will carry it always. Every storm, every trial, every fear you face from now on, you will know that nothing can break you unless you let it." The lean cub flexed his claws, testing their grip on the firm earth. "Then we are ready. For anything." "Yes," the largest cub said. "For anything at all." The humans stepped back, letting them stand together. The cubs felt a strange sense of calm after the chaos. The storm had passed, but its lesson remained. They had faced the impossible. They had walked through fear, pain, and exhaustion, and they had emerged unbroken. In the distance, the plain stretched toward the horizon, red and alive. The clouds were breaking, sunlight beginning to filter through, creating streaks of gold across the wet grass. The wind no longer tore at them, but brushed softly, almost like caress. The storm was gone, but its memory, its power, and its lesson were etched forever into their spirits. The cubs exchanged glances. They had been afraid, they had stumbled, and they had cried. They had begged, faltered, and questioned their strength. And now they knew the truth. Fear was only a test, pain only a lesson, and courage only a step forward. The human crouched once more, looking at them with eyes that reflected not the storm behind them, but the path ahead. "You are ready," he said. "Ready for anything. Ready to face the world and prove what it means to be unbreakable." The cubs lifted their heads together, tails high. Their eyes burned with pride, determination, and fire. They had survived the storm. They had faced fear itself. They had learned the secret the human had carried. They were unbreakable. And now, as the first light of the sun touched the plains, the cubs began to move forward together, step by step, claws gripping the earth, fur and scales slick with water and mud. They walked away from the storm, not in fear, not in haste, but with purpose, strength, and courage. The human followed behind, smiling faintly. He had led them here, yes, but the journey had been theirs. Every step, every stumble, every rise had been theirs. They were no longer cubs. They were warriors. They were survivors. They were unbreakable. As they disappeared into the sunrise, the plains behind them quieted. The storm was gone, but its lesson remained, etched into the hearts of the cubs forever. They had faced death, fear, and chaos, and emerged stronger than any story had ever told. The world had never seen anything like them before, and it would never forget.